Secret of the Mimic has been out for almost a year now, and surprisingly enough, we don't know exactly what the next game is going to be and what it's gonna be about. So in this video, I'll try to predict what is next for Five Nights at Freddy's. Now to understand where the story is headed, we need to look at where Secret of the Mimic left off. The game has 3 different endings, but the one that is most likely to have canonically occurred is the unfinished business ending, where M2 takes our data diver that contains the Mimic blueprints and walks away. The game leaves us with a large cliffhanger, and we aren't sure what happens to the characters after that. The only info we have at the moment is that after the events of Security Breach, the Mimic was trapped in the pizza place by Gregory and his mysterious friend that is never named. As for the F10 machine, I believe Help Wanted 2 already showed us how the machine got to the pizza place, with us loading the Mexus/F10 N4 machine in a Fazbear Entertainment van, and is taken away from the remains of MCM, presumably to the Pizzaplex. But this still leaves a lot of questions. What happened to MCM after it burned down? Where is Edwin, and is he actually dead? And why did the Mimic take the blueprints? We are also left wondering how the Mimic ended up in Freddy Fazbear's pizza place under the Pizzaplex, and why he and F10's designs changed. There is a long stretch of time that is currently missing, and we have no information about. So I think the next Steel Wool game will most definitely answer those questions. Whether it is DLC for Secret of the Mimic or a new game entirely is still yet to be seen. Currently, the only info about a new Steel Wool game comes directly from Scott, where he says a sequel to something is being worked on. It isn't a 3rd installment, but rather a 2nd. Sure, this could easily not be about Steel Wool, but currently I think it most likely is. Unless suddenly we get a FNaF World 2. But anyways, the main point is that the next Steel Wool project will most likely answer the lingering threads left by Secret of the Mimic. Right now, the FNaF project that is inevitable to happen is a continuation of Ruin's story, where after Cassie shuts off the Mexus security system, she frees the titular Mimic. We don't know which ending is 100% canon, but if I had to wager, it is either the Scooper ending, since the costume Mimic is wearing is seen again in Help Wanted 2, or it is the elevator ending, which has presumably Roxy calling out to Cassie at the end. While it is possible that the next project is a sequel to Ruin, I personally think there is a high chance that we get another prequel, because not only does Secret of the Mimic leave a lot of unanswered questions for the next game, this next game is also supposed to act as a sequel to Security Breach and also possibly ending the Mimic storyline. I think it'll be too much for one game to do all that stuff, so I'm confident in saying that we might get another prequel game. So assuming that I'm right and the sequel to Ruin is not the next project yet, here are my ideas for what the next mainline FNaF projects could be. The first idea that I'll present is something you have certainly already heard before, and that is that the next project will take us back to Fredbear's family diner. Secret of the Mimic gave us a lot of references, callbacks and Easter eggs to the diner, and it even showed us that MCM was commissioned to do stuff like merch and other things for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get to visit the location in a future project. Since none of the characters at Fredbear's is haunted, the main enemy will once again be the Mimic, with him wearing costume versions of Fredbear and Bonnie, which I think is supposed to be the Glitchtrap suit, explaining why the Mimic chose that form in Help Wanted. Since MCM burned down, I think whatever Mimic has planned with the schematics decides to go instead to Fredbear's. Thanks to Moon.exe, we know that the Mimic knows about Fredbear's, and so he would know how to reach it. But since Fredbear's is too small of a location for a whole game, I think it is possible that the game might also take place at Fall Fest. We know from Arnold's work documents that Secret of the Mimic takes place in early September, so fall should be right around the corner. Perhaps this next project will start at Fall Fest and then end at Fredbear's, like how Secret of the Mimic had us start in MCM, then it ends at Murray's home. Alternatively, we could start in a ruined MCM after the fire, and then end up at Fredbear's. I mean, the location is close enough to deliver to MCM, so I think it is possible to make our way there. Regardless, I think this hypothetical project will end up with Fazbear Entertainment finally retrieving the Mimic and his blueprints, which leads them to make more mimics like what happens in Tales. Maybe this new line of mimics will look more like Ruin Mimic and explain the design change. But then something happens which results in the Mimic line being shut down and being shelved up until Help Wanted. Perhaps this next project could also explain why the F10 machine was converted into just mexes. Maybe because of the Mimic causing problems for Fazbears, the F10 machine was reprogrammed by them to just be a security system that was designed to hide the Mimic, with M1 losing its Fiona's personality and converting it back to just a regular Mimic 1 program. Another idea for the next project, and the one I think is most likely to happen if a Secret of the Mimic DLC is confirmed, is one based on the 8-part epilogue of Tales from the Pizzaplex. Like with Secret of the Mimic, maybe Steelwool will again make a project based on one of the Pizzaplex stories. Long story short, the Tales epilogues takes place at the Mega Pizzaplex, which is still under construction, and the pizza place below was being renovated into a museum. The workers renovating the pizza place were tasked to break down and dismantle the many endoskeletons left in the location. But then one day, suddenly, a big delivery truck would deliver the new Glamrock animatronics. However, one of them was the old Mimic. One of the workers working on the pizza place decides to take the Mimic and programs it to rip off the heads and limbs of the old endoskeletons in the pizza place. Then after it does that, the Mimic decides to also rip off the heads and limbs of the construction workers. So what's left of the crew escapes and pours concrete over the entrance of the pizzeria, leaving Mimic sealed in there. Then some time passes and a few teenagers break into the old location and are attacked and killed by the Mimic, wearing various costumes. The only survivor, Lucia, was able to defeat the Mimic by tricking it into wearing a Jest springlock suit and springlocking it, which helped Lucia press the Mimic's off switch at the back of its head. Now, if we are talking about how this will be adapted in the games, we either play as a construction worker or maybe even Lucia herself as the final survivor, and our task is of course to try and escape the pizza place while avoiding the Mimic wearing various costumes. Basically, this hypothetical project will have the same gameplay as Secret of the Mimic, but minus the data diver and things like that. A game or DLC based on the epilogues would help explain how the Mimic got to the pizza place, and could even explain the design change, since in the epilogues the characters find an old operator's manual about the Mimic robots that Fazbear made. A project like this could even answer why there is a bunch of weird stuff underground, like the costumes and the second scooper. Before we continue on, if you are enjoying the video so far, please give it a like and also consider maybe subscribing. Anyways, like I said earlier, the only confirmed thing we know about the next FNaF project is that it is a straight up sequel, a 2 rather than a 3. So what if the next project is just straight up a Security Breach 2, with us returning to another version of the Pizzaplex? This idea can work as a sequel to Ruin, and it could even work for a prequel. If a Security Breach 2 were to exist, then I think it's possible that it will be a prequel to the first Security Breach. In this game, we'd see an early version of the Pizzaplex. Maybe like in the Tales books, the building used to be circular, and there were new attractions that we haven't seen before, like a roller coaster, a VR booth, a blacklight kids area, etc. That was all removed and replaced before the events of Security Breach. But the most important attraction that was added in Tales is the Storyteller. For any of you who don't know, in Tales from the Pizzaplex, there is a short story called The Storyteller. The story starts with the board chairman of Fazbear Entertainment, Mr. Burrows, deciding to fire the creative writing team to save on costs, since the Pizzaplex at the time was losing a lot of money. And so the creative team would be replaced with an AI program he calls the Storyteller. All of the board members agreed to the idea, except for one, Edwin Murray, returning after decades of hiding. Even with Edwin's concerns over the project, the Storyteller would start construction. The Storyteller was an AI program that was housed inside a large tree in the middle of the Pizzaplex's atrium. The program it was using is described as a simple template-style software that takes pieces of previously created stories and rearranges them into new scenarios for VR, AR, and arcade games. Edwin would closely watch the project being built, and would briefly see that the Storyteller itself, to his horror, decided to base its design off of David's white tiger. Days after the Storyteller was activated, its influence heavily affects the Pizzaplex, plaguing it with glitches, and it changed the animatronics' personality to be more exaggerated versions of themselves, like we see in Security Breach. When Edwin finally enters the tree, he discovers the problem with the Storyteller. It was running on the Mimic program, which means that the Mimic has infected the entire Pizzaplex. So basically, this is what I think a Security Breach prequel could look like. We would face off against the Glamrock animatronics once again and try to defeat the Storyteller. Perhaps we'd even face off against Tykerok himself in a VR booth. We would also see the continuation of Edwin's story. I think the fact that his body is never found in Secret of the Mimic tells me that he is most likely still alive and will likely return again in the future. So it makes sense for him to return in a game adaptation of the Storyteller. Perhaps we'd also see how Gregory became Patient 46, or we actually face off against him. I think Steelwool essentially remaking Security Breach would give them a chance to somewhat redeem Security Breach and its poor reception. Personally, I am one of many who was really disappointed with Security Breach as a final product, so them having another crack at it, especially with how good Secret of the Mimic was, gives me a lot of hope that they could make an amazing game. A cool detail that I saw someone point out is that in the FNaF 2 movie, Abby has a small model of a baobab tree. This is interesting because the fake tree that is storing the Storyteller is based off a baobab tree, so this little Easter egg could hint at the next game. Like how in the first movie, Scott called this random endoskeleton Arnold, and we saw Bub the dog for the first time, things that are featured in Secret of the Mimic. Now I have one last idea for the next game. This could be out of left field, but fuck it. There is a possibility that the sequel being worked on could just straight up be a sister location too. I'm totally serious. In every Steelwool game, there was always a strange reference back to sister location. In Help Wanted, we get to face off against the Funtimes in the FNaF 4 rooms, and we got to see the bowels of the bunker in the Ennard level. In Security Breach, we got the purple guy room. In Ruin, we have a whole new scooper machine. In Help Wanted 2, we get to see the sister location elevator in both the teaser and in the Princess Quest 4 ending. And there was even a Tales from the Pizzaplex story about one of the victims of the nightmare experiments in the bunker, which is a really odd choice to put in a book about Tales from the Pizzaplex. Like, this shit kept appearing as much as the nightmare and Fallfest imagery in every Steelwool game. So perhaps these strange callbacks could hint that we are going back to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. This idea could work very well, because at the end of Secret of the Mimic, we find out that Fazbear's now owns MCM, its software, and its characters. They even own Edwin's home, and just by looking at the house, it is obvious that it is turned into Afton's home from FNaF 4. Both are houses on a hill, surrounded by trees, near a lake, and David's room looks exactly like Crying Child's room, and he even has the same toys. What's also obvious is that the tunnels underneath Edwin's home and MCM would eventually become Afton's underground bunker. So knowing that, perhaps Secret of the Mimic is setting up a game where we go back to the bunker and see what Afton has been doing there. If Fazbear's did catch the Mimic and his blueprints, then it could explain why Afton's bunker has a very sophisticated AI like Hand Unit, and explain how some of the Funtimes have voice mimicking features. A game like this could also explain the underground area under the pizza place, and what is the purpose of the second scooper. It could even explain why Mexis has a rabbit motif to it. Maybe Afton had a hand in reprogramming it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, There is a lot of potential with a game like this. But what do you guys think? Which one of these options is most likely to happen? Or which one of these options do you want to see happen? I'm interested to hear your opinions down below. Personally, I really like the idea of a Security Breach prequel and sister location too. But if I had to choose one, I'd personally choose the Storyteller game. I just like the idea of going back into the Pizzaplex and dealing with the Storyteller, and also seeing Edwin again after all these decades, and showing how he feels about everything now, decades later. But that's just me. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I would really greatly appreciate it. Anyways, see you on the flip side.